Roland, in your blog today, you wrote, and I quote, "Frankly, the Republicans are going to play chicken with Democrats, force them to blink because they know Dems and President Obama don't have the stomach to fight." Is that really fair to say he doesn't have the stomach to fight? Isn't he the guy who got elected saying he wanted to bring all sides together, get people in a room and come up with compromises?
Okay, every president says that. I remember my fellow Texan, George W. Bush, did the exact same thing when he ran for president. You know, I was sitting here reading a tweet from a journalist, a friend of mine, David D. He said the New England Patriots are whipping up on the New York Jets like GOP whipped up on Democrats today when it came to tax cuts. And when Ed just laid out where they felt they did not have much room, that's because the GOP, as I wrote, sat back and said, look, you're going to blink. What they didn't do is tell the GOP, wait a minute, are you going to allow 95% of Americans not to get tax relief? Are you willing to sacrifice the middle class to get tax cuts in order for you to extend it for the top 2% of the wage earners? That was never on the table. Not only that, Anderson, look what happened. You extended the Bush tax cuts for the top tier for the next 2 years, but you only extended unemployment benefits for 13 months. Why didn't the White House even say, fine, 2 years for them, 2 years for the unemployed?
Nicolle, did the president blink?
I actually don't think the politics on this are that bad for Barack Obama, with the voters that made the deciding that were the deciding factor in his election. I think independents will be heartened to see him keep one of his other campaign pledges, which was what you alluded to, getting everyone in a room and working out compromise. I think that the disillusionment with Barack Obama, the reason his numbers have plunged from 80% the week he was inaugurated to, I think they hover somewhere below George W. Bush's these days, is because what people thought they were getting was a guy who could work with the other side and pass reasonable, sometimes moderate compromises.
Do you think, though, Ed, that Republicans see this as a sign of weakness? That basically this is a victory for them?
No, I think what they see it as getting this economy moving again. And I think they basically now see a president, unlike the Speaker Pelosi earlier this week, who's willing to work, has read the tea leaves from the election where they lost 63 House seats and 6 U.S. Senate races. And basically he has to deal now not with the weak and the lame. He has to deal with the leadership of the Republican Party. And if they want to have any kind of government, cutting taxes or doing whatever in the future, cutting spending, they basically have to work together.
Anderson, 1 second. First of all, we keep talking about the election that took place on November 2nd. Haven't we heard for the past month from Republicans as well as conservative Democrats, deficit, deficit, deficit? So what happened to the deficit conversation as it relates to this particular tax breaks? The deficit will increase, not only for unemployment benefits, but also for extending the tax cuts. So it seems that the deficit argument sort of moves sort of like the wind blowing in a football stadium.
Just one quick point. Why, if rich people keep their money and spend it in the economy, it's a bad thing. And if the government takes it away from them and spends it on runaway spending programs, it's a good thing.
Actually,
you've never been able to make that argument to me.
No. Answer my question.
At the end of the day, getting this economy moving, and the chairman last night, the Federal Reserve on 60 Minutes said now is not the time to do deficit spending. It's a long-term thing. Now it's the time to basically get this economy moving. That'll benefit the president and benefit them all.
Oh, I'm just exposing the fact that this whole deficit discussion has been a fraudulent conversation. It's always a deficit conversation as it relates to the people who are most in need. But again, when you talk about the deficit when it comes to those who are making more than $250,000, likely every single person on this panel, Nicolle, the deficit conversation goes out the window.
What about, to his point, there's those say, look, this will add $700 billion to the deficit by having tax cuts that continue for wealth.
I think the political reality, at least for Republican voters, is that all deficit spending is not equal. I think Republicans have been engaged in a philosophical debate for the last 2 years. We were talking about how Barack Obama has done a great job at expanding the tent on the Republican side, and the tax cut discussion, I think for many liberals, is about the rates at which you tax people.
Do you argue that this...
But it's part of the philosophical debate about the role of federal government in American life. So giving back people's money, no matter how much they make, is always a good thing.
Roland, you could also argue that this is the only form, or the only new form of stimulus spending that anybody in Washington is going to get this year. I mean, that any kind of big government stimulus thing is not going to be very popular, particularly with Republicans coming in. And at least with this, as Ed pointed out, maybe you have wealthy people saving some money and also spending some of this money.
And how did that go for the 8 years of the Bush tax cut? We keep talking about how we got ourselves into this economy. I'm simply making the argument, how has that worked thus far? When you talk about losing 500,000 jobs a month and all of a sudden now we're scraping by with 30 or 40,000, what did it actually get us? It got us higher deficits. I'm just saying, I just think it's amazing how the deficit conversation has just magically disappeared a couple of weeks after, or 4 weeks after the election.
Spending got us higher deficits, not higher taxes. Spending got us higher deficits. But and we continue to do that.
Even the economists would say that those same Bush tax cuts contributed to the federal deficit.
The chairman of the Federal Reserve, who really has something to do, not a president, not a Congress, but really the chairman, he basically said last night, if we had not put $3.3 trillion of Federal Reserve money into this economy, it would have been 10 times worse. So at the end of the day, there has been spending. There's been plenty of spending. The whole system is not about the tax cuts. It's about the banking system. It's about bad loans that were made. And what we got to do is get a confidence back in the business community where they start hiring people again and putting their money back.
So you're saying the moves by the Obama administration were good moves?
Ed Henry, does this allow the White House to try to get some other stuff done in this lame duck session now of Congress?
You're absolutely right. That's a big part of this, is to not let this drag on for another week, 10 days. Try to get the New START treaty, the arms reduction treaty with Russia through. Also try to deal with repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Those are big, big things this president wants to get done. They're going to be hard enough on their own. If the tax fight had been, log jamming everything, he never would have gotten any of those other things done. The other point is, long term, he has a problem with the fiscal mess in terms of dealing with the debt, as Roland is saying. But short term, as Ed Rollins is saying, you have the Federal Reserve Chairman saying, look, 5 or 6 years maybe more of this unemployment. So short term, this president has to do something about jobs. It was a difficult choice, but he made it.